Welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Donald Trump and House Republicans and the lack of retirements we have seen on the Republican side as they go into the 2026 midterm elections. Now, everything is clear from the White House to the Republican Party on Capitol Hill that Donald Trump and the GOP are obsessed with the 2026 midterms, and even more than I am as someone who covers this stuff. Donald Trump has been meeting with Republicans all across the country through his White House officials or personally trying to redraw maps, trying to get Florida now and Missouri to follow suit and redraw their maps, trying to get Indiana to follow in Texas's line and redraw their maps. And the big reason for this is because Donald Trump is worried. He's worried about the 2026 races, but one thing that we haven't talked about really that much is the fact that he is forcing a lot of these Republicans to not retire in the 2026 election year. And arguably, it's a smart move. The reason why he's doing it is because in 2018, there were a lot of retirements going all the way up to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Paul Ryan announced in 2018 that he wouldn't run for re-election in his solid Republican district. And taking a look at those who decided to leave office, a lot of people on the Democratic side, when they left office in 2018, retired, like Kyrsten Sinema, to run for U.S. Senator. Or Jared Polis left Congress to run for governor of the state. Or Tim Walz, who we all know now as the vice presidential nominee from 2024, left Congress in 2019, ran for governor. But on the Republican side, it was a lot less of deciding to retire and instead running for other office. They just decided to retire. A lot of Republicans decided that they were going to call it quits, whether it was due to family, the political environment, and redistricting, or just plainly saying, I'm out of here, like Paul Ryan did. These are the ways these things tend to go, and that's just how it is. A lot of these Republicans didn't think they could win re-election. They were in Clinton districts. They didn't want to put up a fight against the Democratic wave that was coming in, and in 2018, Democrats took what the majority was for the Republicans in 2016 of 241 to 194 and flipped it on its head. Democrats got 235 to the Republicans 200. And so now going into the 2026 race, Republicans actually have a smaller majority than 2016. Arguably in 2016, they were in a better position electorally because they had the 241 seats. But in 2026, Republicans are going to be defending and need to defend, all of the seats they have and can only afford to lose 3. In 2018, Republicans could have afforded to lose upwards of 20 seats across the map and still maintained House control. But why is it that these Republicans are deciding not to retire? Well, like I said, Donald Trump's involvement in the primaries has only made it tremendously more difficult for these Republicans to leave their positions. When you take a look at that most recent news data point from the state of Iowa, we saw Zach Nunn wanted to run for governor of Iowa. Donald Trump called him up and said, no, you're not. And what happened? Iowa's third. Zach Nunn has to stay in the race. And it was a smart move in one degree, right? Why did he have to stay in the race? Well, this race in particular, Iowa's third, knew that Democrats were going to be targeting it, that Nunn won in a state that Trump won by 14 by about 3.5 points. Certainly, Democrats are going to put this on their radar for 2026, and races are almost always, and I say almost because there's caveats to that, but almost always better with incumbents, especially congressional races where the incumbency re-election rate is around 90%. Republicans are better off with Nunn in the race than out of it running for governor. When Elise Stefanik was nominated to be UN ambassador, she won her race by 24 points in 2024, but when she was going to be UN ambassador, because Republicans couldn't win a more substantive majority, this race was going to have a special election. And so after an election in Pennsylvania showed a Trump plus 20 district flipping blue, the Republicans got worried. And Donald Trump in the White House, again, obsessed with the majority and obsessed with the House of Representatives to a degree we did not see in Trump 1, pulled her nomination and made this race less competitive for the Democrats. How? By throwing Elise Stefanik back in. She ultimately decided, though, I don't care. I'm not going back to the House. I'm running for governor in 2026. Either way, she will maintain that seat and won't have a special election in the middle of the year that Republicans were very afraid that they were going to lose. And it didn't just end there. Across the board, Donald Trump has been making calls to a point where the retirements are at a record low at this point. On the Democratic side, a lot of people leaving to run for office, but more so on the Republican side. But only one person so far has just said, I'm retiring without reason to run for something else. And that is Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska's 2nd District, who is reading the writing on the wall. That although he won his district by 1.5 points, looking at the last presidential election, Kamala Harris won this district by 5, Biden won this district by a whopping 7 points. And so seeing that in 2026, he was probably on his way out, yes, decided to retire. But Donald Trump really doesn't like Don Bacon. And at the end of the day, he is the only Republican thus far to make that announcement that he's deciding to retire. Everyone else is running for other office and coming from safe districts. We can take a look at them. Iowa's 4th, Randy Feenstra. Take a look at that race. Is that one competitive at all? Absolutely not. He won his election by 34.4%, right? When you take a look at the other incumbents that are deciding to run, Andy Biggs, Arizona's 5th, right? That district won by 21 points, right? Byron Donalds, he won his district, if we can find it here, by 33 points. So the Republicans that are deciding to retire and run for office are Republicans who know their district won't even be touched if they decide to leave. The only person in a competitive race retiring is Don Bacon. Versus in 2018, a lot of these races, if these Republicans had decided to run, they would have lost, right? They would have lost their reelection. A lot of these districts did flip blue after 2018. Martha McSally, who decided to leave, right, and run for Senate. You'll see in 2018 what happened. Her district flipped, right, from red to blue. 2018, a lot of these districts, take a look across the board. A lot of them ended up going to the Democratic Party. And so it will be very interesting to see in 2026. But the point is that Donald Trump being focused on this means that he's keeping Republicans out from retirement, which means that 2026, Republicans are playing a game that is a lot better for them in 26 than they did in 2018. And that's why there's a lot of expectation that 2026 might have a narrower majority for Democrats than in 2018. The redistricting in states like Texas and now trying to get Missouri and Florida and Indiana to follow suit all are an effort to draw the map because Republicans know they're unpopular. They know that Donald Trump himself knows he is unpopular, despite what he tells the media. He knows, the White House knows, the RNC knows that Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill was a bust. They know that the way that Americans view this second Trump admin is not positive. And so thinking about where it is and thinking about the state of the race, nationally speaking, it isn't great for the Republican Party. So they are incentivized to draw maps differently. They are incentivized to make things more difficult for Democrats. And Donald Trump is incentivized to keep Republicans from retiring, knowing that if they decide to leave, it makes Democrats that much closer at a chance at victory in 2026. Because 2026 is going to be a great year for the Democratic Party, no matter how you cut it. And so 2026 will be interesting to see. Donald Trump being this involved feels very interesting. He's arguably more involved than most Democratic and Republican presidents in recent memory in the midterm elections. Often they're more focused on the White House and other things. And not to say that to disparage anybody. I think that at the end of the day, this electorally makes a lot of sense. To completely say these retirements cannot happen because we need you in office, one, does show your hand that you are very worried about the state of the midterms, which I think is the real headline here. But it also is a politically advantageous decision. And so I'm very interested to see that as Donald Trump continues to be less and less popular and the things that Republicans do in Congress become more scrutinized by the public and by the media, we may see some more retirements. This dam may eventually break because it did in 2018. And when Paul Ryan decided he was not going to run for re-election, really did open up the universe to say, well, if the speaker's going, then I'm going to. And a lot of these retirements were announced way before Paul Ryan ended up announcing that he was going to be leaving office. A lot of these Republicans also, too, that ended up losing, were floating with the idea of retirement, but decided to stay in the race in 2018 because they wanted a fighting chance. Fight they did, lose they did. In 2026, it could go very similarly, where there are some Republicans who just hold off from retirement at the direction of Donald Trump. But I believe at its core that a district like Iowa's 3rd with Zach Nunn could very well go to the Democratic Party. And this race could be more competitive for the Democrats, even with Zach Nunn on the ballot. And so a lot of these incumbents who may be listening to Donald Trump and listening to what the White House is telling them, don't retire, we need you in this seat, may still lose it anyway. But I think it absolutely shows, one, how, in a way, worried Donald Trump is, and two, how much more tapped into these midterms he is than he was 4 years ago, or 8 years ago, rather. And so, I can't believe 8 years. Back to the point, Donald Trump being this involved. We'll see if it pays off. We'll see if it ends up backfiring. Maybe voters will actually be more mad at the incumbents rather than a brand new Republican because they haven't been in office, didn't vote for the BBB. Who knows, right? These are also things that come into question. But as of now, I think that this is the politically smart move for Donald Trump to do. But I don't know how well it's going to hold. And I don't know if it will hold by the time you reach 2026. and it also very much could backfire on the GOP. So right now, Donald Trump making the smarter decision to keep these Republicans out of retirement and in running for office. But a lot can change in a year and a half, and a lot can change in terms of perception of congressional incumbents. And by the time we reach November 2026, afterwards, we'll be able to say, was this the right choice? Was this the wrong choice? Did it actually hold off an incumbing Democratic majority, or did it exasperate it? Did it help? Did it aid and assist the Democratic Party in 2026? We will see. But it'll be a very fascinating race to watch, and a lot that can change, especially on that retirement list between now and the next 15 months. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.